Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the May 6th Human Services meeting. We have a quorum. Thank you all for being here. May I have a motion to approve the March 4th, 2019 minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion passes. Minutes are approved. And we have
I'm
citizen.
sorry. I want to take a vote.
Oh, excuse me. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. We have citizen comment. We have Barbara Jones. James. Barbara James.
That's not the first time that's been said.
Okay.
Okay. My name is Barbara Janes. I live at 802 Colfax. Good evening.
Good evening.
I am here tonight to make some comments and ask some questions. Last fall, when it became clear that Lincoln Street Beach was not Northwestern Beach, and the lake had risen to such a height that our dog beach will not return in the near future, several of us spoke to you, urging you to make Lincoln Street Beach the dog beach. It is my understanding that recently the Illinois Department of Natural Resources said that they will lease the beach to the city of Evanston. Yay. That should have been great news for dog beach users. Now I hear, and this is what I've heard, that the city plans to make Lincoln Street Beach a people beach, sorry. Sorry, but that doesn't compute in my brain. The city knows that there is a large group of faithful dog beach people and their dogs who want and, yes, need a dog beach. In my brain, this should be a no-brainer. Make it a dog beach. What can we dog owners do to make this happen? There are several reasons why such an action makes sense, and I'm speaking for myself right now. The dog beach is a profit center for the city. When there's a decent beach, you know this. People are grousing about being nickeled and dimed. This is a chance for some real money. 2, no Evanston residents would lose any beach space. 3, not only do our dogs need to have a place to run, their owners enjoy the camaraderie and socialization with other dog owners. I, for one, have really missed seeing and chatting with the people I would see when we were at the dog beach. And we were watching I was watching my dog, that was for sure. There is a big group of Evanston residents who benefit from this socializing while watching their dogs. Every time I meet someone I know from the beach, the conversation always turns to how much they miss seeing each other. Not only do the dogs benefit, but their owners do. 4, if there are concerns about some of the dunes habitat, I am confident that we can find a workable solution. We can put our heads together and work it out. We don't have a big crowd here tonight because things happened very last minute and we didn't want to make too big a spectacle. But you know we have had big turnouts in the past. When I sent out the email, I got a few responses, and I hope, Alderman Simmons, you got a couple of emails. This person had a broken leg. And I hope you have received some emails which people said they would send you. I hope you will read these aloud. Rest assured, there is a crowd of Dog Beach people who are eager to come and impress on you how important the Dog Beach is to them. To me, the answer is simple. How can we make this happen? We have patiently given the system time to function. Now it is time for the city to declare that Lincoln Street Beach shall be the dog beach. I would appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
May I say one additional?
Yes, please. Please come to the mic and state your name.
I wasn't planning on.
Your name is?
My name is Corinne Clarkson, and this is about the dog beach, too. It doesn't look like there's going to be a dog beach, and yes, we are very upset about that, but even more so because our only other choice is to go to either Wilmette or Winnetka, where the cost of using their dog beaches is over $200 per, well, if you have one dog, it's 200 plus, and if you have, excuse me, more than one dog, it goes up to $250 or $260. So that's another reason right there. We have to drive to one of those beaches and pay an exorbitant amount when we could have something here that's much more reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. We have presentations, the Evanston Animal Shelter Association.
So I'm not going to really talk about this. You can just watch the presentation. It's apparently going to be muted because there's a song, and since it's on TV, the song can't play. So you'll have to like hum to yourself. But hopefully the pictures are worth 1,000 words anyway. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not going to
Imagine a lovely day. That's the song that will. Yeah, you can sing. Okay.
Thank you for that presentation.
You're welcome. I assume if you have questions, you'll ask those later, and we have people here that can answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Alderman Fisk.
Okay, so I'm just going to cry. So as the failed foster on the city council, and all of the animals in my care, you guys have done an amazing job. I mean, truly. And it wasn't easy. Thanks, that's so sweet. Yeah, well, all of you can come over to my house afterwards and see everyone. But it wasn't easy, as you guys know. We went through a lot of discussion on the council. I'm proud to say that the council did the right thing. You guys have exceeded our highest expectations. You're an amazing group of people. I am so proud of our city and of you for doing this. This is not easy stuff. This is a big commitment on your part. And all I can say is that to the other failed fosters, you understand it. For the for the other folks, just a big round of applause to you. It's fabulous. I mean, we are, to me, a beacon of hope for all of the abused and abandoned animals in the Chicago area, and it's because of you. I mean, we did our small part, but day to day to day, all the animals that come through, and sometimes I think that in my house I have the 1,078 animals. I don't, but it is a big job. And again, thank you so much. And I hope that you will carry that message back to everybody else at the shelter so that they know every day how much they're appreciated in our community. So thanks so much.
Alderman Braithwaite.
I guess I would share in the celebration. I've the wonderful opportunity of working with, I think, at least 2 or 3 of you who serve on our committee for the last couple of years. And for those of you in the audience that don't know the history of what happened, I think 2 years ago when this contract was up, it was a room that was divided. It was divided by colors and philosophies on what you do with the animals, and just to see you here united in one color is amazing. And I said that earlier, but more importantly, when the group left, they took their money with them. And there was a lot of uncertainty about the future of how we would take care of the animals that were displaced. And so there's a nice little budget on page 35 that talks about the breakdown where the City of Evanston funds and the monies that you raise, which is incredible. And Vicki and to all the volunteers, thank you very much for the supplemental information that shows the actual work and how much money you raise above the commitment. So hats off. It's wonderful, and I'm looking forward to moving and accepting this, the new contract. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Next, we have a Arts Council presentation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. My name's Toby Sachs. I'm a member of the Arts Council. I don't have slides. I don't have a song, but I promise I won't make anyone cry. We're grateful for the time on your agenda to give you a quick update on what the Evanston Arts Council has been up to, particularly as we held a retreat last month. Several of us are new to the council, so it was a great opportunity to get to know each other and reflect on our purpose. We looked back at our 3 different grant categories, and particularly at the Evan Starts work that was done in 2015, which was the last comprehensive plan for arts in the city. But then the main focus was to break into task forces, and we spent the day developing our goals, and we wanted to share those with you and look for any feedback. They're in 3 categories: advocacy, granting, and advising. Under advocacy, our goal is to create connections between the council, the art community, and the business community, to align our values with the Evanston City goals for 2019, most especially as they relate to equity, and to increase the visibility of the value of the arts in Evanston with data-driven outcomes from particularly the people that we grant monies to. Finally, having lost the position of an arts coordinator on the staff, we're hoping to facilitate connections between different arts groups, which is an important convening function. Under granting, we're looking to raise the profile of our grant-making opportunities, particularly to interest a more varied group of applicants speaking to that equity goal, to reimagine the grant process and programme, making it more accessible to everybody who might want to turn up and ask for, with a good case. Particularly working towards that equity goal, we want to make sure that applicants from every sector of our community feel invited, welcomed, and comfortable with the process. And if it means changing the process, we're happy to do so. And we're looking finally to see if we can find alternate funding mechanisms rather than simply coming to the council with our hand out. Things like funneling resources into underserved neighbourhoods through community benefit agreements and other mechanisms that we're hoping to look for. Under advising, we just want to be more effective advisors to the council, building relationships. That's why we're here to report today with yourselves, Parks and Rec, DAPA and so forth. Where funds permit, we will come back to you to revisit the question of hiring specialist staff to advocate for the arts, but we do understand the pressures that the city functions under there. So just a quick update on what we're really taking as priorities under those headings, if I may. Have to say from the whole council that Paulina Martinez and Kimberly Richardson have just more than stepped up and give us wonderful support and guidance in the work, and we're very grateful for that. While we're obviously renewing grant proposals, looking at the public art projects and maintenance and so on, the three priorities that we've picked under those goals to really try and move forward at the moment. Under advocacy, we're putting together an updated list of all the arts organisations in Evanston. It sounds like a fairly straightforward task, but that list simply doesn't exist at the moment. So we're working on that. And then the main thing that we intend to do with it is to reinstate the cultural arts lunches that were held but discontinued a couple of years ago. We've gone back and talked to the arts leaders who used to come to those, and they found them really valuable, and the cross-fertilisation between the arts groups was valuable there. So it's a priority for us to get those going again, and we're committed to starting them again in the fall and hoping to do them twice a year thereafter. In terms of granting, we're right in the middle of our little session there. And last Saturday, a group of 10 of us, judges half from the Arts Council and half from the community, came together and reviewed just over 20 grants proposals, both for general operating and special projects. And we saw some terrific applications there. We're pulling our scores that we've given them together at the moment, and at our meeting in June, we'll work out exactly how best to disperse the 30,000 that we have available for that. The neighbourhood grants, you have details of the specific ones we've made so far in the packet. I won't go through those here, but that's a part of the process that we think we can bring even more people into, because it doesn't involve all sorts of written formal application. It involves turning up at the meeting and making a case for amounts up to $1,000. And we really would ask the help of everybody here and in the room just to make it known throughout the community that those monies are available for arts projects, and we would love to see an even broader group of people coming in and talking to us about those. In advising, we are your Arts Council. We are here as advisors, and we do what we can to listen to try and make that advice as broadly based as possible. We have a sort of real agreement amongst us that we will be coming to all the ward meetings, making ourselves better known there, listening to the community better there, I hope, and spreading the word again of what we can perhaps do to help if people come forward. We attend as many cultural events and arts programmes as we can, and we're happy to engage with any of you or any of your colleagues at any time on arts matters if you'd like to talk to us. So finally, we hope that the word is getting out. The Arts Council is alive and well and here to support arts programming in Evanston. The members that we have really are terrific and are energetic and are getting quite a lot done. We do recognise that what we would like to do is beyond our reach as a group of volunteers. We have this wonderful level of support from city staff, but we are working to bring you back at some point a case for perhaps a part-time, perhaps a contract staff person with art specialist knowledge to help with that convening function. We will be back to talk about that. We're trying to give it due consideration first to give you the best possible view of what we think would help. But with or without that position, we're here for you, we're here for the community, we're here for the arts in Evanston. Thank you very much for the time this evening. We'll be back to report whenever you'll have us, basically, and be delighted to take any thoughts or comments that you may have for us.
I would just like to say thank you. Thank you for your thoughtfulness and inclusion. I have seen it in my time here on council, and the Arts Council has certainly been a friend to the neighborhoods in the Fifth Ward with our vibrant public art installations. So thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for understanding our city priorities and the staffing adjustments, hoping that we can get back towards having staff support. But you're right, Kimberly and Paulina are just fantastic. So thank you for all that you're doing, and we appreciate you looking to do more.
Thank you.
Alderman Fleming?
Well, I would just echo what Alderman Ruth Simmons said. I appreciate that you all have taken the initiative to come to committee meeting to just kind of keep us updated so we don't hear from you, just at budget time. And I also have seen you guys have been very attentive to my citizens who have asked for some art in South Evanston, so we appreciate that. And we do look forward to getting the word out more to citizens in my ward, at least to let them know of the grant opportunity so that more Evanston residents can have their art displayed around the city as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Oh, yes. See, I could do nothing without the help here. Yes, we would love to draw everyone's attention to a fabulous exhibition up on the fourth floor in the parasol room of Javoid Simmons' work. It's really an extraordinary celebration of his family's move up from the south, not to be missed, fourth floor. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last presentation, we have social services.
And just to add to that, also in the stairwell, in the center stairwell, there is an exhibition from the Evanston Arts Center that's going to be displaying into July. And so we're working with them to bring in new artists into the building to display in the hall, in center stairwell throughout the year. So I just want to add that too.
Thank you.
So good afternoon, good evening. Kimberly Richardson, Deputy City Manager. I am here to just give a quick update on where we're at with this social service review. As promised, back when I first came to Human Services, I was going to come back to give you an update periodically, and so this is my time to do so. First, I want to just say that this process has been very interesting. One thing that I have gained from this is that it's slow, but it's been one that has taken its time, but I think the fruition from that is going to be very mighty for us to bring to you all once a process has, a recommendation has been provided. So our purpose has been something that we being our committee, have really been focusing on, is to use an equity-based, results-driven accountability process that should structure the city's approach to social service and structure our outgoing community engagement strategy in doing so. What's important about this is that it's just not internal driven, so we're not just speaking to our staff. We're going to be taking approaches to speak to our community, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. I want to, for some reason, I don't have the right clicker, but I'll go with this. I just want to acknowledge our committee. I think at the previous meeting, Alderman Braithwaite mentioned he wanted to know who will be staffing the committee, and at that time we were still developing that committee. So I am now providing you with that list. And I just want to acknowledge that these individuals are committed to this process. They have given up their a number of hours to come to meetings that last 3-4 hours at a time of us just meeting to plan. And their dedication and interest has been great and valued. I don't look at this as Kimberly's social service review any longer. It really is our team effort, and we work really well, and we have great conversations and debates and trying to know how to figure out how to do this best. I really appreciate having these individuals a part of it. I just want to acknowledge their participation in this. So as a committee, we have a deep understanding of our analysis of using the equity framework, and we, as the Social Service Core Committee, we acknowledge historical and ongoing patterns of exclusion and mistrust in the institutional process in the city of Evanston. That was very clearly stated when we were first discussing social services, and that was something that as a committee we acknowledged and understood. So as we're going through this process, how do we ensure that we are making sure the community feel that they're part of this and that it's very transparent and that we are able to build trust again with how we are looking at our social services. So therefore, we are committed to using equity in how we envision the role of government by providing more help to those who may need it. We will do this in our everyday work by building ladders and pathways to inclusion, by breaking down departmental silos, increasing the effectiveness of our government programs for all. And that is something that guides us. So this is our guiding principle as we move forward in our work. So how do we get to that? So it's a 7-step process, and I won't belabor this too much. And if you are interested in asking me follow-up questions, I will go in more detail. But step 1 is, what are our tangible results of improved social service deliveries? So these are questions that we're asking through this process, and we're very meticulous about how we ask these questions and frame them, and so that we can ensure that feedback we're getting back from the community internally and externally is going to be able to guide us to recommendations moving forward. What are tangible outcomes in each of our departments and programs? What kind of data matters? Not all data is needed, but we do need data. So understanding what data is and how that helps us in forming our conclusions. Who must we engage? And one thing we are very clear about, we have to engage community members of color in particularly, because this really is a racial equity process. And most times in these discussions, we always, I won't say always, but most times discussion, we sometimes don't do a really great job in reaching out to communities that may not be as connected or have the social access that some other communities may have. And so it's very intentional that we are identifying that, and that we are going to make an effort to ensure that those voices are at the table while we're having these discussions. Step 5 is benefits and burdens, understanding our decisions. How do they benefit the communities? How do they burden those communities? And things that how we currently do our processes. So looking at our programs, our process to intake, how do we work internally? How do we benefit the community in those ways? Looking at it from different perspectives, not just the program, but just communications, after outreach. Sometimes what we've heard anecdotally is that someone may come in and they may have one situation, they have to go to a department, then they have to go to another department and start a process all over again. And so how can we better in how we implement services serve the public in a way that they don't feel already burdened from having to use city resources for assistance? And then planning, looking at these different aspects and processes and answers, and coming up with a plan for implementation. And within that step, there's multiple other steps within that to get to a real plan that's realistic, that's actionable and measurable. And so that is something the committee will be doing once we collect the feedback that we're going to be taking from different community participants, as well as our direct providers and our internal staff. And then step 7 is, how will we ensure accountability, communicate that, and evaluate our results? This is not a one and done process. This has to continue on in order for it to be effective. And so how do we engage that? That will be something the committee will have to come to some type of conclusion and work through. And I'm sorry, I did not realize I was not stepping. I do not like these. Sorry, I need to get a. So, who are we engaging? So one, I want to stop and say that our internal staff, we have started the communication with our internal staff. Our first meeting with staff, which include departments of community development, police and fire, parks and recreation, social services, health and human services, and the library have all been a part of these discussions internally. So we had our first meeting, around 30 staff members attend, and what we spent that entire meeting of talking about is equity, equality, understanding, defining what that is, and then we talked about structural racism versus individual racism, and why that's important because of structures that have been built not by our doing, but by generations of doings, and how do we undo that in this process so that we can make ourselves more aware as we're looking at policy changes. We're going to have our second meeting this Wednesday, which is really our first meeting, really focused on social services. An exercise that we're working through right now to have for that meeting is really discussing what is the vision, what is the mission of social services for the city of Evanston, and who's the best group of people to ask that, but those who are doing the work. And so we want to do a visioning process, and then finally our third meeting will be with the staff, will be more how we see improvements, how do we get, if we had a pot of money, how do we use that pot of money in a way that be more effective? And so that will be our third meeting, which will be held in a couple weeks. And so once we have those meetings, we're now moving over to direct service providers. And these are members of the community, organizations in the community that we work with either by funding their services or also we have partnerships with them. We're inviting them to come to have the same process that we're doing with our internal staff, we're going to be doing with our external partners. And that's important because, one, we want to be able to set the stage and say, here's what our equity goals are within the city and how can you help us achieve it so we can all have the same priorities versus them coming to us saying, here are the priorities that we're looking for you to fund. Now, our program participants are very important because they're the ones receiving these services. They have a voice in this. We want to make sure that we get their feedback on how the services are being managed, as well as how they feel they're being impacted. Do they see the results from these services being given to them in a positive? Do they feel that they're burdened, like I said earlier? So that will be something that, as we're going through these meetings with those individuals, we're looking at our senior services programs, our programs that are held through Human Services Department, and then also our youth and young adults. We're going to have meetings set with them. And then finally, we are going to have a community meeting because even though we've been very intentional about who we should bring in to have a conversation, at the end of the day, the community wants to be a part of this, even if they're not directly impacted. And so we are going to have a meeting scheduled for Saturday, June 1st at the Levy Center, and that will be from 11 to 1 to kind of give them an overview of what we've been doing and get their feedback as well. That's it. Any questions at this time?
Alderman Fisk.
Well, Kimberly, remember when we first started talking about this, and I said, this is a huge project, and it's going to take an awful lot of time and organization and participation. And as we all know from working with Ms. Richardson, I mean, you've been able to distill this into a model, I think, that is really working and giving us through the process a lot of information that we need. I don't know anyone better to do it than you. And the challenge to you at that time, I mean, it was huge. And I'm really encouraged by what I hear you say. And I hope that you get the kind of response from the community that I think this effort really deserves, because it addresses a lot of the issues that we're working very hard, at least up here on the dais, to address. But reaching out into the community, especially with the team that you've put together, is very meaningful, I think, to us, and is essential to our moving forward as a community. So thank you for what you're doing. And I just really want to encourage everyone in the community to, if you can't get directly involved, then follow along with what the work of the committee is, because it's extremely important, I think.
I appreciate the gratitude, but I couldn't do this without the team. I mean, each person has a real strength that they bring to this conversation. And so I would not be standing here if it wasn't for the team that we have and just their commitment and dedication to doing this work.
Thank you. Alderman Fleming?
Yeah, I also want to just thank you and the team. I know that when we started this, it was very, very tense during the budget time. You were given a task that was a little bit on an unrealistic time frame, and a lot of people in the community still had a lot of anxiety because they just felt like it was going to be, well, they weren't sure what it was going to be. So I appreciate that you have been very thorough and diligent, and you're doing the outreach to the community, to the providers. I think that's probably, I've only been here a couple of years, but that's probably the first time that we have, or the council or the city has done that in such a strategic way to hear how things are going with, particularly with people we fund. So I appreciate you for doing that, and the team. I know that they also have other jobs, and you all are also doing this on top of your other work. So thank you for making that happen. And hopefully, as we see the results of this, the community will have more trust in this process. And so as we're looking at other departments outside of budget time, people can understand how we're making some decisions and that we're being really mindful of the citizens we're serving.
Thank you. Just agreeing with my colleagues, just thank you. I am encouraged where I was not that encouraged before in terms of how we ended up in our budget season and the gaps in services and those that are left underserved still. So I would like to make sure that we don't only engage those that are currently receiving services, but just the broader community in general, because there are some great resources that the folks that need them aren't accessing, and then folks that are not accessing any services that should be heard as well. So just want to send you some encouragement, you and the entire team, and thank you for your hard work on this. Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so thank you also for the information, and it's great to see the team that's involved with doing the evaluation. And we've all talked about the past, and part of my angst and criticism is that we came up with a priority-based budget. And so in that budget, I feel like we captured some really firm thoughts from the community in terms of the projects or the programs that were essential by their standards. And it was clear, from my perspective, what they wanted. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we were all painted into a box where it seemed like it was staff advocating for some programs while others felt uncomfortable. And then City Council was in the middle of voting between what management is suggesting, what staff is advocating, plus a bunch of other priorities. So I guess my unanswered question, and I'm waiting to go through the process because it is a very difficult task that you've taken on, is how is this information going to apply to the budget season, right?
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, whatever you land on, if the metrics tell a story that we can all look at the data or the information and see value in it,
Yeah.
and then somehow we're monetizing it, then it makes sense. But I will be pissed to all hell, and quote me, whoever, but if we get back into a situation where we're doing the exact same thing,
Yeah.
and then we're deciding between services that our community values versus objects, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just, thank you, and I'm looking forward to seeing the outcome. It's still a
Yeah.
little murky for me right now. I
It's
just
going
wanna
to be a little
clear
murky.
with it.
I think, can I just say one thing?
Please.
It's interesting that you make that statement, because when we met Friday, we were doing our exercise preparing for our meeting with staff this week. And at one point, a committee member said, I feel like we're moving too fast. And there was a lot of agreement in the group saying, yeah, we're going way too fast. How is this going to be meaningful? And I said to them, well, we cannot have this completed during the budget process, because then it will lose its value and give you all the opportunity to really understand and marinate and ask follow-up questions, so that when it comes budget time, you have something you can look at to make decisions based off of. At the end of the day, we're not here to make decisions. We're not policy decision makers, but we want to make sure we give you as much information that you possibly can have to make sound decisions with however you choose with the budget process. So it is important to us. We understand that sentiment, and I think the murkiness that you express, I have the same skepticism within my committee group when we first met.
Sure.
But now that we're in meeting 4 or 5, there are many of them are now getting it and are like, I'm on board. I want to do this. This makes sense.
That's great. So can I ask this question, Kimberly? So will we see another version of the priority-based budget survey that goes out to the community, or is this tool and the data that you are collecting will be the lens that we use to somehow
So
evaluate it during the budget process? Because I'm assuming this is all coming down to the budget. That's just my assumption.
Well, I can't make that assumption. So I was tasked to look at social services only. I can't speak to what we're going to do in regards to the budget. I do understand from the city manager that we do not intend to do a priority-based budgeting process this year, that we're going to use, go through the process as we've done in previous years. This here is really not about a survey. It's not about priority based. It's about how do we take feedback and make changes structurally within our organization. Because honestly, some of these can be no cost or low cost. Some of them may be revisioning how we provide services that may not impact the budget in a direct way. So I don't want to I was very intentional by trying to get this in your hands before the budget so that you can talk about social services around how we deliver those services and are they impacting those in the community, so that we can ensure that we're moving forward with a strong social service programs and not having those type of questions that we had previously about different services and programs and their value in the community. This is a democratic process, by the way. This is what this is supposed to be, to allow people to speak.
Thank you. Alderman Fleming?
Yeah, real quick. So I understand what you mean, Peter, and I think it's hard, or Alderman Braithwaite, it's hard to separate the two because this did come out of budget, which was very trying, I will say. My hope is that we will look at this whenever we receive it and have good information for making whatever changes we think we might want to make, and then also be mindful of what the community has said during the budget last year and through this process when we look at the budget. But I don't think I get what you're saying, but I don't think we can necessarily charge Kimberly with the budget, with saying cut this or cut that. She's just going to come back and I assume tell us kind of what the community wants and what her findings were based on her. And then it would be for us to make sure we, stand firm to what the community has said during the budget time, regardless of how the senior administration presents it to us. It is then for us to say, we're not cutting this or we're doing this or whatever. One, based on what the community said last year, but then also based on this more tangible exercise that we've gone through, which is why, it is kind of fast, but I am glad we're not going to get it in August, because then I think people will just see it as a budget document and we'll have that potentially tension where other departments say, well, you didn't analyze my department, so I don't have this kind of proof that my X, Y, and Z is valuable. So ideally, if this works well, we should do this throughout many departments in the city. We can use it for budget, but it should not be our budget document. I think even outside of this, we know what our community standards are, particularly around social service, and even the priority-based budget, the way it was set up, really set people up to think it was mine or yours, and I have to now prove that mine is more important than yours, which, as you said, kind of pit us in a really bad place and a sour taste for the community.
And thank you all. One of the things that I guess, call me old, but I really think that it'll come down to budget. But what I appreciate with the folks from the animal shelter, there's a real clear understanding of they have a specific cause. These are their outcomes. This is where the city of Evanston puts in the public dollars, and these are the dollars that they raise. And it's crystal clear. So I was using this, and we had very specific conversations with the folks around the table. Granted, it is a much smaller item that we are analyzing. I want to be clear on that. I understand the huge, enormous, elephant that you're trying to eat, but using them as an example, it's real crystal clear, who's their target population? Dogs and cats. How are they providing services? Boom, boom, boom. And it's just clearly laid out. So maybe that's too much, and I'd love to have an
Sure.
we can hear more about your process, and I'll just stop
So
talking.
those call community indicators, and so what we are trying to identify are what those community indicators are. And because we have multiple constituents that we're serving, we're not just serving one population or species in that matter. We're talking about, our youth and young adult, I mean, from cradle to, to the, I don't know, Seniors, there you go. That we're serving. And so we have to understand our population and then our community indicators within those populations. So I believe once we set that actually is going to be the foundation for the work that our Chief Equity Officer will be using as part of the analysis to put together the Equity Action Plan, so that will help her be able to gather the data that's necessary so that in the future we can use equity through a budget process. But right now, I would not encourage equity budgeting, because we haven't done enough analysis to really understand how that will actually impact our budget. And plus, with an equity budget process, you have to make it a participatory budget process, and that's something that we have to train staff to be ready to do.
Thank you. Is there a thought that the report that you submit will show where the nonprofit community or the social service community can do more, or where possibly services can be shifted? I mean, we have so many nonprofits and practitioners in town, many that we fund. I want to make sure that we allow the experts to take lead in areas that that we're talking about. So, for example, if we have, we're not a social service agency, right? So I know that we have a responsibility to the community to provide these services, but I want to make sure that the nonprofit and the social service agencies are very involved in assuming some of the responsibility and new direction once you finish your report.
Sure. I think the one thing that we have discussed internally is wanting to make sure we have clear priorities set once we discuss our, once we've gone through this process that you all get a chance to look at, deliberate, and make decisions on. That would then give some guiding principles to our, our funding partners in the not-for-profit. The problem right now is that we're not really giving them, here's what our priorities are and what we want to focus on. We kind of have a very broad way of, you tell us what your needs are and we'll try to fund it in some form or fashion. It works if you have abundance of capital, of resources, but when we're trying to talk about impact and we know our community indicators and we now know that the funding that we're giving isn't actually reaching those individuals in the community that are the most need resources, then we have to change our priorities and communicate what those priorities are to our community partners to ensure that they're able to meet those goals. So I think we have to work with them, because this is not just a City of Evanston eat it, but we also have to be able to set clear guiding principles.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any further discussion on this? Thank you, Ms. Richardson.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have items for consideration. HH1, renewal of the contract between the City of Evanston and Evanston Animal Shelter Associations for action.
Move approval. Second.
Can I have a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. HH2, renewal of contract between the City of Evanston and the Volunteer Animal Organization. This is for action.
I'd like to move that for approval also.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We have HH3. And Ms. Cartwright, Karen Cartwright came in late, and she does have a public comment. Would you like to have your comment now? You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, committee. I was very pleased to see in the most recent issue of the newsletter In the Squad Room, which is written weekly based on the deployment meeting at the police department, a link that Chief Cook called people's attention to of the Illinois Association Chiefs of Police Shared Principles. And I read the principles. I'm not here to discuss all of them, but they're great. They stimulated a thought that has, been on my mind for a while in my recent work with regard to police complaints. Our current Citizen Police Advisory Committee could make an important step to be in compliance with one of these shared principles, which states, we endorse the 4 pillars of procedural justice, which are fairness, voice, transparency, and impartiality. Currently, the meetings of CPAC are noticed only according to the minimum standards, and that is a posting in the elevator and at the door of the building in which that meeting is to be held. So, given the nature of the fact that these meetings frequently change and are canceled, there's not a good way for citizens to participate by attending these meetings. A lot of other meetings in the city are noticed by email alerts, text alerts, and so on. And I think that this would be an improvement to the transparency of the way the police department operates. So I'm asking you and the chief, who I've already spoken to make it possible for the city staff to set up an alert for the CPAC meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. HH3, Ordinance 159-018, amending portions of the City Code incorporating restorative justice practices for minors. This is for action.
Move approval.
I'll second.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you. So the information is in our packet. I think we'll save it for a longer discussion when we take it to council. But I do want to just, take a moment to acknowledge and thank some people that have been involved with this for like the past 2 years, Madam Chair. And so the birth of this came out of last election season, where we were looking at 2 pieces of information that came out. One was the situation, the report from North Carolina that talked about the number of stops in the city of Evanston and put us pretty high in terms of the number of blacks that were being pulled over by our police. And at the same time, we had another very emotional situation with a young juvenile that was arrested at the police station. And I would tell you, in my 7 years on our city council, this is probably one of the more meaningful pieces of legislation that we're turning into, that's policy that's actually going to have a huge impact for generations, right? And I think what's important to note is we sit sometimes and listen to people, and I want to be careful how I say it, give us really valuable feedback, and then there's some folks who just love to complain. They just love to be outraged and complain. And I really want to thank the aldermen that stepped up, Alderman Revelle, Alderman Fisk, Alderman Wilson, members of the community, members from our police department, our parks and recs. I mean, this was 2 years of really just going through a lot of data and spending a lot of time to make the careful changes to be able to deliver a product that we can all support. So I want to thank, I already said to my peers that are here, Patrick, Keenan, Devlin, I think, are you going to speak to this? I'm surprised I didn't see you sign up for public, and if you don't, that's fine. Well, come on and start walking towards, we had public comment at the top of the meeting. And while Patrick is coming, there was Harriet, Becky Biller, Karen Demers from the YJC, Chief Cook. I want to thank your staff for their participation, Garner, Hart, I'm going to miss some names, Pickett, Barnes, the list goes on for really participating, because at the end of the day, you're going to have these tools that they're useless if the police department does not, utilize them, and they've been very, very cooperative. So I just want to thank you, and if you can pass that along, and Patrick, if you want to share a few words, and then we'll go ahead and move this to on the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Braithwaite. I would also just like to acknowledge, first off, Patrick Keenan Devlin, Executive Director of the Moran Center for Youth Advocacy. I'd like to also acknowledge my staff that is here from the Moran Center, particularly Osa Gazelius, who has been leading the City of Evanston's diversion program for both cannabis and for curfew for a number of years. She has done that work tirelessly, humbly, and has really helped hundreds and thousands of young people go through that process and stay out of trouble going forward. Just quickly outlining for the Human Services Committee what the ordinance in front of you accomplishes. The first is it gives adults the option to opt for community service as opposed to what is often a daunting fine that could be imposed by the Administrative Hearing Division. The second is it provides confidentiality to juveniles and to their records that are housed here in the City of Evanston. The third is creates a private hearing for children. Right now, children are required to appear here in this chamber, where it is publicly televised and it is an open forum. This would allow for private confidential hearings. And the last is it really reimagines and re-envisions what we as a city should be doing when children violate our laws and our social contracts, which is asking the question, how can we help you? How can we help you repair the harm that you've caused, as opposed to saying, here's a fine or here's community service hours, but really asking every child that appears in front of our city, how can we help? And I'm really excited to work with the city. The city has contributed unbelievable hours to this process. The staff has been incredible. So I'm particularly grateful as a citizen, but also as a nonprofit executive director for their contribution. And I know this will be a model not only for our region and for the state, but for the nation.
Yeah.
So thank you, Alderman, for your leadership.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No further discussion? All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Did you have one thing?
Just one point of clarification. So currently, Patrick, the youth hearings are not televised.
In this ordinance, they would no longer be televised.
No, they're not. Correct me if I'm wrong. They're not. And where's our AV person? I want to know from him as well.
They're not now. The
They've
hearings
never
aren't now.
been. They've
Right.
never been.
Historically, those have been open proceedings that have been televised.
Yes, they've been
Yes.
open,
Public
but I
meeting.
think what you said, yes, in fact, they are public meetings, but they're not televised.
Oh, not I
Right.
apologize.
That's okay.
Video recorded is what I meant. They are recorded. I apologize.
Okay.
Yes.
Are they?
And they will continue to be recorded,
Okay.
but they will be bound by the confidentiality as set out in this ordinance. I apologize.
Oh, no worries, no worries. I mean, we got a lot of details, and we still have some room to grow. And Kimberly, I want to acknowledge your assistants, Erica.
Kevin Brown.
Yes, Kevin Brown. There's so many staff, and I promise to have all their names written out so we don't miss anybody. But a tremendous amount of work in the last
Mario
2 years.
Tretto, too.
Mario from our legal department, absolutely. So we'll make sure that we have a long
That'd be great.
list of names, that we don't leave anyone out. Carolyn Fraser from Northwestern and the work that they did. So really excited to move this forward. So thank you again
Thank
for
you,
all your
Alderman.
hard work and
Yeah, of course.
dedication.
Just one final correction. They are not recorded. They are public, they're not televised, and they're not recorded.
They are recorded.
Come to the.
Okay, so the AV just called.
Kimberly, so Kimberly Richardson, Deputy City Manager, we do record our hearings for transcription purposes. So it's a legal technicality, they're not recorded for public, it's for transcription for the legality of the hearings.
Right.
So it's just voice transcription. It's not video recorded, it's voice transcription that we use back to record. So there's something that happens, we can go back and listen to the audio and get it transcribed if necessary, because that does happen on occasion where there might be a case that requires transcription services. So we do transcribe our all of our hearings, not just for juveniles, but for parking. All of our court calls are recorded for transcription purposes.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Fisk?
Yeah, Kimberly, I just want to make sure that the juvenile records aren't subject to FOIA. Okay.
Good point.
No, at this, right now,
Or recording anything.
Right.
this is for a legality purpose, so we have to just do it for any type of legal proceeding, but we do not, you want to speak to this in a little bit more, since I just know we do.
Victoria Benz on behalf of legal. We would record them. They're not FOIA-able because they still would be protected by the Juvenile Court Act, because it still would be about certain interactions. So
Right.
even though it's recorded, if someone sent a FOIA request, it's still protected information.
There you go.
So, corporate counsel, I guess 2 quick questions. Who sees it, and under what circumstances would it be released?
It's not a video, it's an audio. It's only audio.
No, crystal clear, but I'm like, we're storing this information, so who gets to see it? And
Nobody
under
gets to
what
see the
conditions
juvenile
will it-
records. And the transcription is recorded because the individual that's facing the administrative adjudicator has a right to appeal. And within
Sure.
30 days, he can appeal
Sure.
and have the case sent out to the 2nd District, and the judge has a transcript of what happened.
Perfect.
There you go.
Perfect. Thank you, Chief. And I think when you said he, it also reminds me of another thing that we did. We updated the pronouns throughout the ordinance, which I thought was pretty cool as well.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. HH4,
Move of approval.
all in favor? Any opposed? Items for discussion, we have review of police complaints.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Dennis Leaks, Commander, Office of Professional Standards. Here to review DI number 1812, 1813, and 1814. Are there any questions pertaining to these DIs?
No questions, but for DI 1812, I would like to need further information. The resident is not prepared to have comment at this time, but we need to have further information, maybe take it into executive session. Definitely a meeting with the chief and the resident as well regarding this incident.
Executive session for,
If there is a video,
okay. Will that be this evening or
no,
next?
to a future date, and I don't know when that date would be.
Okay.
Victoria Benson, again, on behalf of legal, we would have that set up for your next
Thank you.
regularly scheduled meeting.
Thank you.
12, that's the felony traffic.
Alderman Fleming?
I just wanted to make a comment regarding all of the DIs we're seeing tonight. I just want to make public, because I know there's been lots of talk, I think, and some community frustration about the way these were handled in the past. And I know that the chief is working with the committee to, update where we're going to update in terms of the police complaint process. But what I will say is that having sat on the CPAC committee for the last 2 years, I guess, I appreciate that these seem to be a little more thorough, and I know we have the same OPS staff, and I know we have the same process, but before, just sitting in there, everything was unfounded or whatever the ruling was. And so I do appreciate that now things like the camera not being on, or, directions being vague, or, evidence not being processed correctly, that those, even though they're smaller infractions, I appreciate that there is some verbal or written reprimand happening now. I think this is going to get us on the right path to restoring some community trust in the police and in the process. And I know, or I assume these are not frivolous reprimands. So I do appreciate that you all have listened and heard the community concern and are really, not that you weren't thorough before, but these are showing up a little bit differently than they used to. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Items for communication. We have an update, HH5, 12th Annual Woman Out Walking Program opening celebration is June 15th at Evanston Township from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. That's correct. So all are welcome. How do you sign up? Registration is open online. You can go to the City of Evanston website. Any other details?
It is $5.
It's $5 and
Register one person, the other person can be registered for free.
okay, bring a friend. You get a T-shirt.
Yes.
Yes. And a pedometer?
No, no, put out.
No. You get a T-shirt. Bring a friend. We all need to be fit and healthy, right? It's springtime. Get out and walk. Any further discussion, committee? Motion to adjourn?
Yes, motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.